Hi, everyone. Today's Saturday, October 26th, 2024. Welcome. I'm Jeffrey Morgan, and this is a talk I host twice a week to discuss my experiences on the path of soul transcendence. This is an offering brought to you by the movement of spiritual inner awareness with the encouragement and support of my friend John Morton, who holds the mystical traveler consciousness, which is the spiritual consciousness that allows us to do the work that we're doing here today. If you're new to the call, the format is simple. We're going to start by calling ourselves forward into the light, which is calling our awareness forward into the light of God that's already present. And then we're going to chant three Anai hues. Hue is an ancient name for God, and Anai invokes a quality of empathy and compassion. And then I'm going to play a video clip from my teacher, John Roger. And then I'm going to do a reading from the Kena Upanishad called That Invisible One, talking, I believe, about the soul, but in some of the references I've made in the talks previously. So you'll hear some of the themes that we've discussed. But with that, Ron Holnick, please call us forward into the light, and then we'll chant some Anahu together.
My pleasure. Lord God of all creation, we come before you this morning and we place the light ahead for the upcoming election in this country, which may very well be the stepping stone into what we create as our next new age. And we place the light ahead for the highest good of all concerned to be brought forward. So be it.
The kingdom of heaven is within. That's profound. I didn't say that first. I haven't really said anything new that's real profound. I tried to get it to people in a way where, please look. I know it's within. I know that. My hand's raised. I've been there. I go there. I stay there. I live there. You are and have in you divinity. And your personality needs a lot of work on. And so does mine. The way to deal in it is just, who am I? And you keep asking and answering until you come to the place where the answer is one that you have always repeated over and over, and you stop asking and you just start being. When you start to be, you start to push back inside as though you're laying in a deep feather bed. And you start to go just deeper and deeper, and you really feel and sense that you're falling deep inside.
All right, this is from the Kena Upanishad called That Invisible One. The student inquires, who makes my mind think? Who fills my body with vitality? Who causes my tongue to speak? Who is the invisible one who sees through my eyes and hears through my ears? The teacher replies, the self is the ear of the ear, the eye of the eye, the mind of the mind, the word of words, and the life of life. Rising above the senses and the mind and renouncing separate existence, the wise realize the deathless self. Him our eyes cannot see, nor words expressed. He cannot be grasped even by our mind. We do not know, we cannot understand because he is different from the known, and he is different from the unknown. Thus have we heard from the illuminated ones. That which makes the tongue speak, but cannot be spoken by the tongue, know that is the self. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes the mind think, but cannot be thought by the mind, that is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes the eye see, but cannot be seen by the eye, that is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes the ear hear, but cannot be heard by the ear, that is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes you draw breath, but cannot be drawn by your breath, that is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. All right. What would y'all like to talk about? Natasha.
Good morning, Jeffrey. How are
Morning.
you?
Doing
Thank
all
you
right. How are
so
you?
much for these. I'm doing great. And thank you so much for these biweekly calls. For me, they have been incredibly helpful, transformative, useful. The information is wonderful. Um, so I read something recently in JR's teachings that I understand a little bit and would love your commentary on, would love your insight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I read that I am both the seeker and the source.
Hmm.
And I really understand that in terms of the intangible things like happiness, wealth, relationships, even, which are all inside of me. And I'm wondering how, if you can comment generally on this concept, that we are both the seeker and the source in everything. And also, specifically for me, the one I'm having trouble understanding is how this applies in the outer with respect to what we do for work and career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that question, actually. It brings me back to one of my favorite Sufi sayings, God is love, lover, and beloved. You ever
Mm.
heard that one?
I haven't.
That's a beautiful one.
It's a beautiful one.
Well, why don't we start at the end and work backwards? Career is a means to an end, isn't it?
Mm.
Career is something that you set up as a strategy to have an experience. And there's a couple of those experiences that you really like. And a lot of those experiences for most people are things like security and material comfort and foods that make us feel full and taste good on our tongues and associating with people that we like associating with who we think are cool. But career is just a means to participate in a karma in the world. Ultimately, that experience that we seek is always found within, and the degree of our quote unquote external participation in the world is really the means by which we construct the conditioned experience of that. And I say construct because we learn from a very young age, in order to feel safe, I must have money. In order to have purpose, I must have a career or a profession. We learn these things. Usually they're not inborn. Most people are not born with this notion that they have to do something other than be to be worthy. But we learn that we get a lot of positive reinforcement when we do things like turn in homework assignments on time and get good grades, and we get the things that make us feel good. But the interesting thing is the experience that we were looking for when we set up that framework was always within us.
Mm.
And I don't, to me, that's not some kind of admonition that says, hey, don't participate in the physical world and do your career. That's not what that means to me at all. That just means understand that participating in a career is more about completing a karma and cooperating with that process than about actually getting you value and meaning and purpose and all the other things you want. Because
Mm.
the source of those things that you want are the divinity within you.
Mm.
So it's interesting. It's almost like there's that old phrase like, how do you get more of what you want? Well, you start to want more of what you have. It's kind of interesting, but there's a way in which when we can fill our cup, fill our tank, whatever, through the inner process of soul transcendence, through connecting to the sound current and consciously falling into the arms of the beloved in that sense. There's a kind of a fulfillment that comes over us. And the more we can engross ourselves in that authentic empowerment and fulfillment, we go out into the world and everything just seems kind of like icing on the cake. And
Mm.
I can always tell if I had a day where I did enough SEs, because that day, if I did enough SEs, I don't tend to be pulled into the dramas of my career, and I don't tend to be pulled into the needs for approval, and I don't tend to be pulled into the compulsive eating, and I don't tend to be pulled into the there's a whole list of ways that we attempt to experience the loving that we are externally. But the more that we can reference from the inside out, starting with the solic reference and out into the world, my experience is the less we are pulled by the shiny objects of the world called sensory stimulation and emotional fulfillment and all the kind of things that we try to go out in the world to get. So, in a sense, the seeker at origin comes from the soul's need for experience. So, this ego personality construct that seeks is created in order to create that experience, in order to facilitate the acquisition of experience for the soul. And so the seeker exists within that construct, but the soul itself, as a drop that contains the entire ocean of love and mercy, is the source of all sources.
Yeah.
So there's a wonderful Rumi poem. Let me see if I can pull it up. Um, it goes, if you knew yourself for even one moment, if you could just glimpse your most beautiful face, maybe you wouldn't slumber so deeply in that house of clay. Why not move into your house of joy and shine into every crevice? For you are the secret treasure bearer and always have been. Didn't you know? And interestingly, that poem is likely making reference to a hadith attributed to Muhammad, where when asked what the purpose of this existence was, Muhammad said, as God, I was a hidden treasure and longed to be known, so I
Mm.
created creation that I may be known.
Mm.
So the whole construct becomes a means by which people can have this experience of rediscovering divinity, rediscovering the divinity that they are. Now, that construct of the seeker is not a bad or a wrong thing because there's also this beautiful setup that was put in place through the Christ plan that says, seek and you shall find, ask and it shall be given. And the seeker brought you to this point. So we should all bless and thank the seeker. But it's also at the same time, that seeker that brought you to this point, there's also a seeker that's very confused in all of our histories that brought us to this point, that had us through all the lifetimes of seeking the love of God externally and
Mm.
constantly getting entangled into the comings and goings and the ins and outs of the physical world. And we can love, we can honor, we can bless it. And then we can also understand that, in a sense, when Jesus was saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he was speaking for the Christ in all of us. That when we tap into the most essential, authentic, and true part of who we are, the search is truly over. What more could you be looking for than complete divinity, than a whole spirit, than a Holy Spirit within us? So for me, that's how I relate to what what John Rogers said, and I'm glad you brought it up. Now I'm gonna go look that up and look at every time you mention that because that's absolutely extraordinary. It's like one of those like there's so many phrases from John Roger where it's like when I read all relationships are inside of
Yes,
you and there's no
yes,
excuse to withhold your loving. It never really sunk in until it sunk in, and when it sunk in, it was like changed my
yes,
entire life. And I
yes.
think this one, what you just said reminds me a lot of there's a seminar called Authentic Empowerment
Mm.
that's like one of the like pinnacle like ba-boom, blow your
Yes.
mind, you know, seminars that I love to watch of John Roger. But we go out that notion that we just go out into the world looking for the loving that we are.
Mm.
It's such a it's such a strange. I mean, like there's a there's a wonderful set of Sufi stories um, associated with attributed to Mullah Nasruddin. They're about this character called Mullah Nasruddin, who's
Mm.
kind of like a clown, like a divine clown, and he teaches these deep spiritual teachings by essentially being funny and silly and stupid. And the story goes, Mullah Nasruddin was digging through his garden and looking around everywhere, and his friends go, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm looking for my keys." And then and then they go, "Well, where did you leave them last?" "Oh, inside my house." And they go, "Well, why aren't you looking inside your house?" And then Mullah Nasruddin goes, "Because the light's better out here."
Right,
And
right. Yeah, absolutely. And when you talked in prior weeks about all relationships are inside of us, that really sunk in. And I started to explore that, and not just relationships with other people, but
mhm,
relationships with everything, right? Everything in my life, my relationship to my experience, my relationship to um, the traffic, right? Anything that's happening. And then when I read this other piece, it really was aligned with on top of
yeah,
what you were
it
teaching.
fits.
It
Yeah.
fits. And what you just said about what experience am I seeking through work or career or through any, right? Through relationships, it's a little easier to understand because all of those are inside of us. However, what you said really makes sense, and I get it because what I hear you saying is that what experience am I seeking to have through work or career? And that, if it is security or if it is
Well,
You
I'm
actually,
saying
or
that the banquet's already out. Like we can have the experience that we're looking for
is
now,
inside. Yes.
and then our work can simply be our love made visible and our
Mm,
cooperation with the rhythm of creation. It,
mm,
our work can simply be a love note to God. We
mm,
don't, it just can be the way that we participate lovingly in our karma and the completion of that action. It
mm.
doesn't need to be a statement of my value or your value. It can
Yes.
be a loving, beautiful game that we play with excellence and joy. And it could still mean that we get to the top of our career and all the other stuff. But what is the difference between me getting to the top of my career in illusion and me getting to the top of my career in loving? The difference is the story. If I can get to the top of my career without building a story about how, well, I'm really good at this and that's why I did that and that this is why I'm such a great and other people they're just lazy, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and I did it my and this whole story that is
Yes.
so unnecessary
Unnecessary.
when
Yep.
all it needs to be is I had a karma to do this, I did it and I did it with loving, therefore God was there.
And all the other things are already inside. All of the security, the
If you
approval,
want
all of that is
security,
all
if
in
you
there.
want abundance and riches, health, wealth, and happiness, abundance,
Yeah.
prosperity, riches, caring, sharing, touching, like it's all
Mm.
there,
It's all
a
there.
100% there.
Yep, I get it.
And and that's the thing. That's the advertisement. That's why it's like do the spiritual exercises because then we get to know that it's there. It's
Correct.
not a concept or a belief. We don't do belief systems here, right? We do experience systems.
Yeah.
So you go into it, you tap into it, and you go, "Oh my God, I won the lottery. How could I ever want anything else?" Yeah, that was always there, but were you aware of it? That's why it is such a gift to give ourselves to just take the time to go into spiritual exercises, because when we're touched by that and that energy starts to flood our consciousness and into every cell of our body, we start to understand there really isn't anything out there that we want more than this.
Yeah.
More than it's like whatever the world has doesn't hold a candle to what I truly desire, which is infinity. And when we can understand that and yet lovingly participate in our career and our work in our out in the world with a consciousness of unconditional service,
Mm,
that to me is freedom. I think what
yeah.
I see is one of the primary sources of entrapment in the world is creating associations that are not there.
Mm,
So basically saying, my work gives me purpose. Well, no, God gives me purpose. My work is what I'm doing, and I get paid for it, and it allows me to participate in a healthy way on my 10% level.
yeah.
It's like disconnecting those things. The other thing that gets people into trouble is they keep banging their head against their career, thinking that their career should be the purpose of their life. And how come I don't feel a greater sense of purpose? Well, you may not have a karma to feel a great sense of purpose in your work. Your work is not where your purpose lies. Your spirit is where your purpose lies.
Yes.
We are here to remember that we're divine,
Yeah.
and the world is here to help us forget that we're divine. It's not a conflict, it's not a war, it's not against us, it's just systems that were set up. The
Yeah.
Christ brings the memory of the divine, the world tends to bring the forgetfulness of the divine, and it's perfect. There's nothing to fix in that. It's just about cooperation. And that's why I think there's that phrase from Jesus, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar and unto God that which is God's, is so powerful and so multifaceted because it's essentially saying we don't have to have against us. We don't have to have, there's no like, you have to understand that like in the context of that teaching, there's this notion of like dualism where there's like Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara. There's like good spiritual beingness and there's this lower evil bodiness. And he's essentially saying, no, just cooperate with every level that you're existing and expressing on. But Don't forget that you are God. Don't forget that you are the mystical traveler. Don't forget that you're also the Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. This was really helpful.
My pleasure, Natasha.
God
Thank you
bless
for
you.
sharing. God bless you. Um, Ronnie, I don't believe I've shared with whoever's on the 2023 iPad. Um, I'm going to start with you. I can't hear you though. You got to unmute yourself. Ronnie, I'm going to start with,
Got it. I got it.
yeah.
Am I unmuted?
Oh, yeah, you're unmuted.
Great. Hi.
Hello. What's
I've
your
been.
name?
My
I
name is
call it.
Anthony, and
Hi, Anthony.
I live in Pennsylvania, a little town called New Hope. And thank you for choosing me. It's been difficult for me for a number of challenges I've had, and I'm not sure
Mhm.
exactly. I would like your ideas, opinions, and perspective, and connection to spirit on these issues. Uh, I need to just settle myself now. I'm challenged to some extent by following my intuition rather than my doctors.
Okay.
Uh, and it's related to two issues that have been in existence for quite a while. One of them is cancer, which my wife and I have different opinions. No, that's irrelevant. It's not aggressive, and my wife thinks that I'm misinterpreting what the doctors have said. And then I have a question about my brain, my mental condition for the last 4 years.
Mhm.
Basically, I'm a little verklempt at the moment. I'm optimistic about it all. Tell them what it is. No, and nobody has given any prognosis that has told me where I'm going, how long I'll be in these conditions. But oh yeah, my wife just she wants me to tell you all of it. Basically, something I'm not happy with, and I guess I just don't like to admit it. They call it early Alzheimer's, but they diagnosed it 4 years ago. I don't
Okay.
see any significant issues yet. My memory is not as good as it used to be, depending on the topic. But so, it's cancer, mild cognitive impairment. And I'm looking for your perspective on how I've been connecting with spirit, some people think that I'm in the wild blue yonder and I'm accepting things that I'm not accepting reality. And I have a sense that people think I should be worried. I'm not. I'm in acceptance. I feel that I'm in acceptance. I'm in God's hands. I'm not in the hands of the doctors because I don't follow half of what they say, and I've been around for a long time. So I want your perspective on my connection, whether you can divine the connection I have with spirit, whether I can divine what the hell I'm talking about. I do have depression at times. I do feel sad at times. My wife calls it
Okay.
depression, but I'm at the gym. I'm at the gym every day. I do many, many things. I'm not sitting around moping. Uh, anyway, that's, I guess, most of the story for the moment. And I think you're
But
frozen.
no, I don't think I'm frozen.
Okay, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
now that is working.
So why don't we let's just because I could see a little bit of energy build up. Why don't we just take in a deep breath first? Just taking a deep breath. There you, there you go. From your stomach. That'd be great. And just feel God breathing you. You don't have to breathe you. You don't have to know how that works. Okay, that's better. Okay. Now, now let's talk. Um, you don't need me to tell you what your spiritual connection is. That's between you and God. You can, if you're an initiate or if you're studying towards initiation, you can write to John Morton about that piece. Um, that's a different matter. But in terms of you with you, I'm a big fan of people finding and standing in their truth. Um, Now, the caveat to all of that is there can be a lot of noise and interference with that process. And the tricky part is A, there's going to be a lot of projection. There's going to be a lot of programming that you might have had from a young age. There's going to be a lot of ego investment in control and thinking that you have things figured out or you know what's going on. There's different layers. And then within those layers, there's a defense of each of those layers called cognitive dissonance, which says if I'm getting information that isn't compatible with my worldview about who I am and how I work, then I'm going to dismiss it. I've never really had a lot of luck in my process finding the truth through a mental gymnastics or arguing with my wife or arguing with myself or trying to make the truth appear to me or asking someone to part the clouds and God's face oh, you have to do this and I don't usually get the answer that I'm asking. And even when I would write letters to John Roger, he would usually respond with a question or he would correct my spelling and or grammar. So, and sometimes both. So, my experience is the thing that I can do in a situation that feels chaotic, the thing that I can continually do is I can clear the junk. I can, because the thing is, I actually look at your process as sacred, and I look at my process as sacred. And I know that there's an inherent intelligence to the flow of spirit within me and to the flow of my own karma in my life. If you're experiencing early stage Alzheimer's, there's a purpose within your karma for that. There is a purpose, there's a clearing. Sometimes people have Alzheimer's so that they can dismantle a very, very strong ego structure that they refused to dismantle previously. And the spirit says, no, 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 it's time for a different way of relating so that you can have an experience you agreed to have. And so it dismantles it for you because a lot of ego is built around memory or the construct of memory or the presumption of past events. So there's a way in which even a process like Alzheimer's is serving our spiritual inner awareness if we allow it to do so. And for me, in any situation where I'm making an important decision, I will struggle to quote unquote find the answer. But it's much, much easier for me to start to clear things that are not the answer. So if negative thinking is not the answer, I can start to clear and burn that, chanting my tone, doing the things to clear that. If somebody's projection or somebody's idea, maybe I can recognize that's not it. And then the other thing I can do is I can do spiritual exercises to connect into an essential part of me, which is the essential part of me to some extent that I described in the beginning of our talk with the poem, with the quote from the Upanishads, of that one that is transcendent of this condition called Alzheimer's or called whatever else we're dealing with. You connect into the infinite one, the one that doesn't die, and you start to see the truth of the pattern and how it serves you. Depression may be a physiological condition of the Alzheimer's, but it's important to understand we are not our depression. We are not our isolation. We're not any of those things. Those are just experience patterns built into the karma that we're experiencing. That's just the curriculum that we have. And it's not an affliction, it's simply what you're working with. In terms of listening to your doctors, my experience is at the end of the day, we are the one that we have is this one. So being true to ourselves is very important. But part of intellectual honesty goes, okay, but if there's a way in which I might be blocking the information due to a prejudice or due to a belief or due to an ego position, I got to be willing at the highest level to release that. And I find that usually an indicator that I have something to clear or release on something is a loss of neutrality or lack of neutrality. So the doctor gives me the information and I immediately go, that no, no. And I get almost like angry about it. Now, me getting angry about it could be that I have an opening to the doctor and I allowed in a projection and then I'm reacting to that. That happens, but there's something that's out of balance. It can also be you could imagine a circumstance where the doctor says it's this, this, and this, and you just calmly go, huh, I'm going to go check that out. And then you check it out and you go, that one doesn't test. That one doesn't check out inside of me.
That's basically what I do. I go and I test it. I read about it. I analyze it. I
Well,
go and
I
I
would
go
be careful
inside.
though. I would be careful though, because the mind is always limited to your mental karma. Like you can't go outside of that. I find more if we can cultivate an attunement to the experience level and to the movement of the energy. So in that sense, it's not so much for me about making sense or whether I can out research a doctor or whether my internet, like my search engine capabilities are better than someone else's. It's not any of that. It's more about the honesty of does it really check out inside of me? Now, does it really
I,
check out
I,
inside of
I
does it
do
really
that.
check out inside of me doesn't need a lot of rational or mental justification. It could just mean I need more information. So understanding that also sometimes that doesn't check out inside of me might just mean I don't have enough information yet. And I think there's a way in which the consciousness, like for you, there's like it feels as if it's almost like there's a defense against a loss of freedom in the consciousness or a defense like somebody's trying to encroach on the freedom or the expression of freedom. but
Well,
but understand that freedom is a karma, like down here the only true freedom is freedom from this structure. Any semblance of freedom or autonomy or I'm in control or any of those things down here, please understand it's part of a karma. It is a trap. One of the ways that I've seen the negative power trap people over and over and over is with this notion of freedom down here. Freedom down here is a myth. It is a concept. It's an idea that we use to justify other ego desire patterns. So understand that the freedom comes from soul transcendence. But that's the same thing as social justice. People look out at the world and they say, well, there's so much injustice in the world. If we could just fix this, then the world would be a utopia. That is a trap. That is a trick. Many people on this call were probably pulled into that very same trick. So understand that in order to be in true integrity with a decision-making process and the thing that you're talking about, there's a call that I follow called renewal, which is how do I clear the decks? How do I let go of all my prejudices and everything I've thought before? How do I let go of my resistance to what's present? How do I come to this like a child with complete newness and openness and then receive of the information? And part of integrity is also whatever was true yesterday may not be true today. So I might walk into the doctor and I might go, you know what? I love what he says. I'm going to follow exactly what he says. And having the freedom in your consciousness to go, that's what it is.
I don't let my feelings guide me. It sounds like you're asking me to let my feelings guide me. So if I feel the doctor's doing the right thing or the wrong thing, I don't make the decision based on a feeling. I base it on what is he saying? What am I doing? How long will this work? How does it work? Etc. So I don't now, you know, maybe if I sit down and meditate on it, I'll go with the meditation feeling. But I
Yeah, I'm
don't
not
go
talking about emotional feelings. I'm talking about more of an intuition level,
right.
like a knowing, but not a knowing that comes from an ego position, a knowing that comes from a peace that surpasses understanding. That's how I approach decision making. I clear out the junk and I go into the silence and I see what remains.
So how do I get? So what you're suggesting to me, I think, okay, what I'm hearing through my ears and my brain is that I want to set aside all the information I have, all the information given to me by doctors, everything I'm reading, ignore it all, not ignore that, put it aside, meditate on it, and wait for spirit to tell me. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying I'm saying use techniques like forgiveness, use techniques like anything you have to clear, use free-form writing, use anything you can to clear out the junk because you're talking about you looking at information, and I'm saying the you that looks at information may be distorting or biased. So for
Yes.
me, I go even further and I say, clear the one who's looking at the information. Once the deck is clear and it's silent and it's not an argument, it's not a resistance, it's not a fighting, it's not a contraction, it's a peace, then it might be listening to a word level, but again, that could be mental. It might just be like more like when you kind of like lick your finger and hold it up and see where the wind's blowing. You kind of see where's the flow of energy, where's the joy, where's the loving, and go in that direction. I just have a lot of trust in the flow of spirit and the flow of spirit through you that is indicated by loving and unconditional, that unconditional loving that has nothing to do with right or wrong, good or bad, or position. So it's not about battling on the information. The battling on the information is because there's a part of you that feels like your freedom's going to be taken away or you're going to be forced to do something. So there's almost like there's a part inside of you that has a sensitivity to that. That's what I perceive. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm saying you do forgiveness and heal that part of you so you're no longer operating from a defense of that and you're simply operating from, Lord, what would you have me do? Or whatever terminology you want. Spirit, what would you have me do? Universe, what would you have me do? And you really feel that process of what's present.
And that takes
And
me to acceptance, I think, is what you're suggesting. I go to acceptance of what is.
But correct. And just to be clear, though, the acceptance that I'm talking about is one that also accepts the limitations of your perception. So
What
it's taking it even deeper into you and into an observer that kind of sees the process and goes, "Oh, got it." The cognitive and personality processes by which that look at the information, that examine that, and that argue with this, and then it refuse to do that. that's part of the karma too. So how do I free myself from all of it so that I'm simply operating from what, Lord, what would you have me do? So I don't know. See, I don't know how to crack the code of like, God, show me what to do, but I do know how to clear out the junk so that there's at least space for God to talk. There's not a bunch of noise in my head getting in the way of that. So I'm just sharing with you what works for me in the decision-making process.
Yeah, and it all depends on what question I'm. The question says, God, let me know what to do. Well, the issue has to do is, what am I talking about when I ask that question? What do I do about what?
Yeah. Or what's
So
for the
that
highest good?
there's,
What
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, or like what's for the highest good for my body, for circumstances, for my soul's destiny. What's for the highest good for my own destiny, for my own learning and my own path home to God.
And that will take me to that. I assume what you're implying is that that will take me to a place of acceptance of where I am at that moment in time or the decision I'm making at that time. Is that what you're saying?
I think it'll take you to a place that has acceptance in it, but it'll be less about a decision that is from the mind, from the ego, from the forcing of it, and more from the cooperation of the flow. Like this is what's present. There's love here, there's joy here. See, for me, decisions are always complicated in the mind, but as soon as I bring it to the silence, like I'm talking about, it's like, oh, the sky's blue. You know what it reminds me of? It's like there's a part in the movie The Lord of the Rings, if you've ever seen it, where Gandalf can't like he has all this memory and he can't remember which path to take in this cave that they're going through in this kingdom, this dwarven kingdom or whatever, and he's trying to decide and he's stuck and he's just sitting there for like seemingly hours. I can't decide where to go. And then he goes, "Oh, it's that way." And then everybody goes, "Huh?" He goes, "Yeah, the smell is less bad that way." You go, you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, there's always a physical. There's always it seems what you're saying is there's always
not
a
not a
physical. There's a
physical
physical
no.
trigger, the smell. Is that what you're
While I'm
saying?
not being while I'm not being literal, it's more like saying sometimes we overcomplicate in the mind, and the indicator, the signal that we need is very simply where is the greatest love and joy underneath all the information, underneath the circumstance. I'm saying there's a way that we can simplify the decision-making process so that it's less about the story and more about the loving. That's all.
So let me see if I can say it to myself that reflects what your intention is. If I can say that I'm in my joy and loving when I'm doing my decision, when I in making a decision, then that is the goal. Not it's a goal, but that's the direction that is the most uh, connecting to spirit that I should follow. Is that what you're saying? I'm using words that don't work for me, that I'm having a
No,
hard
no,
time.
that's fine. No, 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 no problem. It, what I'm saying is we can't often force the truth to appear before us and tell us what to do. But what we can do is just work on clearing, releasing, forgiving, so that there's silence and openness. And then at that point, usually the next step is very clear. So instead of focusing on solving a problem you think you have, or answering questions you think you have, you focus on clearing the decks so that you have the eyes to see the answer that is right in front of you.
Acceptance of what is. No, it's not even acceptance of what is because I may
It's
not get
just
the answer.
seeing clearly. It's just seeing
Seeing
clearly.
clearly, which could be acceptance or it could not be acceptance of what is, right?
Yeah, it could, yeah, it's just seeing what's there and taking action in relation to it. But I think what gets in the way of our decision-making process is the way that we complicate with the story and the way that we complicate with information and the way that we start to like somehow in the ego it's not good enough for us to just have an intuition or have a sense or have a direction. So all I'm suggesting is I would do clearing processes like freeform writing, forgiveness, things of that nature, and work on. And you could also, there's another technique. There's a great book called The Power Within You. There's another technique called an ideal scene, or even programming the universal mind, where you could start to create a list of describing the experience that you want to have through this process and focus more on that. We tend to focus on method versus the experience that we want, and we get really hung up on how we think things should work rather than simply being really clear about what it is we want to experience through a process. So if you say something like, I really want to feel honored, I really want to feel supported, I really want to feel like I'm trusting myself and I'm in integrity throughout this process, that's probably a more effective focus than doing a bunch of informational research to prove that you're right. You follow what I'm saying?
I do.
I,
And
I think it's like going directly to what you're actually asking for, because as soon as you're clear that that's the experience you want to have, then you've opened up the field for all the different ways that God can help you experience that. Are
thank
you
you.
with me?
I feel that I'm
God
an
bless.
acceptance of where I am, but I won't bend to it. I am going to, I'm not going to go down uh, without, I don't like, these are bad, these are not good words because they sound aggressive.
It's okay.
I'm not going to go down without a fight. And I feel secure in who I am and secure in uh, that I will make the decisions about who my doctors are, et cetera. And none of this, maybe I'll just, roll dice, but I will never roll dice. And even if the dice is with God, it's like, I'm not going to roll dice and say, God, give me the right number here.
Yeah.
And you roll dice and I'm going to accept that. I'm not going to do that. So I have this brain that's functional in
Yeah.
a way that is too earthly, I think.
No, it's not, it's fine. I would love your mind and I would just focus more on healing whatever needs to be healed in there.
There you
And I would
go.
just my thing is, I see the mental patterns you're doing are a tool for a part of you to seek fulfillment. Instead of thinking that you're solving a problem, why not go to whatever you're trying to fulfill and heal that? Because you talk about freedom, but there's that like famous quote of, I think it was Jung or something like that. If we don't make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our life and blah blah blah. I don't remember the quote. I'm not that
Sure.
cool.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, do you understand that if you're up late looking, doing research, and you're going on this like deep thing to, and I'm only going to use this doctor, I'm doing that, and you're doing this whole thing, but all the while you've got a part of you that's hurting, or there's a part of you that's driving that, you're not addressing the source. All I'm
Got it.
saying is research is going to be much easier for you. All these processes are going to be easier if you just address the source. So asking that question, what's behind my quest for this? What's behind my seeking this? Do you understand?
What's the deeper behind? Because I can go to 5, 10 levels, but what's the deepest level
What's the deepest behind, and
behind?
because you don't want that yanking your chain, right?
Right.
It's like making decisions should be it's based on the information, it's based on the wisdom, it's based on the awareness, it's based on all, but having a part of you that feels disenfranchised or hurt or any of those other things is just going to be static in the channel for you.
Yeah. And maybe I
So
don't like
that's,
the feeling of not being in control. And the more I think, the more
yeah,
I
no,
am in control.
I think you might be onto something, Anthony. I think the not wanting to lose control might be what's getting triggered by some of the cognitive processes that are going on right now. And it'll be so healing when it really goes to your bones that you're not in control. God's in control. And good thing too, because God's much smarter than you are and loves you even more than you could imagine. So as soon as that's like in your bones,
Yeah,
I
got
think
it.
this whole process becomes super, super graceful.
I got it. I got it. I hear you now. I feel the vibration coming. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I saw that too. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sticking with this. Thank
Thank you
you.
for following my crazy mind.
I love your mind. You gotta love your mind.
I
Your
do.
mind is there so that you can love it.
Thank you.
Love your enemy.
Thank you. Thank you very
God
much for
bless
your
you.
time and your perspective and your knowledge and your wisdom and your grace. And I will stop right there.
None of that belongs to me, but the part that belongs to me is that I love you, and that's and it was a pleasure. Have a
Thank you very
wonderful, wonderful day. God bless.
Thank you. You too.
Ronnie, we're at the end of the hour. Do you want to put something in the light? Just put your name in there.
Yeah, I'd just like to put in the light me and the work I'm doing with DSS-1 this year.
Oh my
Thank you.
God, congratulations. Doctorate of Spiritual Science class at Peace Theological Seminary and College of Philosophy. If you haven't done it, do it. It is like plugging into a cosmic power grid, like 25 hours a day.
Tell me about it. That's what I'm going through.
You've been having some fun dreams, huh, Ronnie?
Amazing. Amazing. While I'm awake and while I'm asleep. So all of it. God bless
All
it.
right. Okay. Well, God bless you all. The blessings already are. Have a wonderful day.